Okay, kia ora team. Hey, some reason the old camera's not going today, so it'll just be audio. But this is the second session around unlocking your potential, and it's around removing this interference that you identified last session. And so, hopefully, in your mental tracking sheet, you've identified areas and incidents or events in your relationships where there's possibly some broken promises, agreements, or unmet expectations. You've also looked in your own environments at home, work, sport, wherever else around where there's some unsafe feelings in that environment. Could be due to a boss, could be due to other colleagues. And then there's the areas of self-betrayal. So who in particular have you been running a story on? Who have you in particular been justifying your strengths or justifying your situation and absolutely vilifying them with all this massive evidence? We're going to dig into that to remove this interference. And how we're going to remove this interference, like Tony Robbins talks about, is you grab that weed and you rip it out. And we need to address it with the particular person or persons that this interference is with. Now, that means having a conversation, and to help us with this conversation, we need to go back to the stress response and think about the times you've had difficult conversations or critical conversations with others in the past, or even when others have had them with you, and think about the times they've got aggressive or defensive, that they haven't responded in the way you were thinking they would respond. 9 times out of 10, it's because you've put them in stress response and you've come in as a threat. They've seen maybe it's your aggressive tone, maybe it's your opinions towards their performance. They've seen it as a threat, and so they are then operating in their Hulk brain. So it's important that we keep the Hulk brain and the Rambo brain safe. Because if those two brains feel safe and that there's no threats in this conversation, then they can access their driver's brain. They can think rationally, logically, clearly. Okay? So these are some tips to help us keep that lower brain safe. And I want you to think of this as a competition. Actually, no, not a competition. Sorry, I take that back. I want you to think of this as a game almost, but you win this game if they feel, this is the other person you're talking to, touched, moved, or inspired. Sorry, that shouldn't be and, it's or inspired. That is a winning outcome for you. Not if they feel depleted, sad, mad, or angry. That no one wins. Okay? So you win this conversation if you leave the other person feeling touched, moved, and inspired. So first of all, to do this, you obviously need to take the responsibility and have this conversation. All right. Don't be like 2 5-year-olds who are separated at the end of a house because they're not going to share their toys. That's literally how we've been operating. You look around in your workplace, potentially even in your home, in your sports teams, there are people who are acting in their Hulk brain and they go back to being toddlers. Nope, I'm not going to talk. No, this is mine. Okay, so you show resilience by operating in your driver's brain and take responsibility for making contact. Now, when you make contact, you talk about the facts first. Hey, I'm making contact because I've avoided you over the last 6 meetings, or I've avoided you, if it's a family member, in the last 5 gatherings. You spoke to me about A, B, and C. It's the facts. You're not adding in your view of it. Just the facts. If a police officer was to come in and interview, he'll say what was said, or he said A, B, and C. He wouldn't write down what your version of it was or your meaning. oh, he said A, B, and C, and I meant that to be, that I'm hopeless and that he doesn't respect me. Leave that stuff out. Okay, start with the facts. And then you can acknowledge your story. Hey, based on those facts, this is the story that I've been telling myself, and I've been collecting evidence, false evidence, against you to support my story. I apologize for that. I'm sorry for that. Okay? Then we got to find this mutual purpose or the vision that you have for this relationship in the future. So an example for me was I had a cousin that I had been avoiding, and the mutual benefit or purpose of us reconnecting and overcoming this situation was that our kids could actually hang out together like we used to hang out when we were cousins. We were so close, and yet because of an incident, we had avoided each other, and our kids haven't played with each other for a while. Okay, and they wanted that too. So it's a higher purpose almost. It's above him and me. It's for our kids' sake. And then you can just talk about what is the vision that you have between the other person. Like I said, for us and my cousin, it's for us to have this close-knit family so that we can enjoy times like we used to when we were kids. Quick couple of stories. First one is the Jace story, and when someone is left touched, moved, and inspired because there's action. And this story is about a stag do. I was on the bridal party. I was organising the stag do for a mate in Auckland. I was living in Wellington. Everyone else was pretty much in Auckland. And I rang up on the Wednesday before the Saturday do, and I was talking with the other best man. I said, mate, it's all organised. Yep, sorted. But I'm not coming. And I had this in my mind all along. I wasn't coming. It clashed with an event. I think my darling may not have let me go. So I was determined, no, I can't come. This guy is a salesman. But by the end of the phone call, I felt so inspired and moved that I actually booked the flight while we were on the phone, 2 days before the event. And I just felt this sense of, I can't remember exactly what he said, to be honest, but all I can remember is the feeling. I felt empowered. I felt valued. I felt, that I meant something. I know I meant something so much that I just literally couldn't be there, and which caused me to, take action and make a flight. Second story is around conflict. So I know some of us would find this quite easy. We don't avoid conflict or conversations with others, critical conversations with others. And some of you might be too aggressive. You might like it too much. But for me, I avoided them like the plague. And after going through the mental tracking sheet, what I discovered is there was an event when I was really, really young that sticks in my head, no doubt. It's there. And it was when we were 3, we had just got bikes. There's a photo of us, with the training wheels. And I just remember seeing 2 adults in the room, aggressive, angry. They were loud. The facials were angry, looked angry to me. The noise was loud to me. And I saw an object go across the room. I saw hands waving all over the air. And I just remember thinking, looking over there at that picture, saying, that's not good. Avoid that situation. That's the thought I had reflecting back on that situation. And so I've avoided conflict ever since. Whenever I see a picture or a scenario happening where people are looking aggressive, when people start being noisy, I'm out of there. I'm not even in the same room. I go quiet if it's team members. I don't confront them. I just kind of nod my head and, yeah, mate, just hurry up and stop. And as soon as I acknowledge and recognize that that event had caused me to adapt to my environment in that way, I felt empowered. I felt empowered that I know the cause of why I avoided conflict. And why this is important is because this is going to be fearful. This was so fearful for me. It's going to be fearful for some of you. Some of us, including myself, have avoided conflict for our whole lives. And we are almost like caged animals. You know, I remember there was a list of people that I would walk across the other side of the street so they wouldn't see me. In team environments, if there was conflict, I would just, like I said, exclude myself, go into the corner, walk out the room, not even address it. And it just felt like I was bounded by this. And so to help with this fear, because you need to overcome this, this is the key to removing the interference. You actually have to do it. If not, you're bound by that interference. And so fear setting by Tim Ferriss, instead of goal setting, it's called fear setting. Define what your challenges are. Define them all. And then you can list all the things you can do to prevent that challenge from going wrong. And then list all the things you could do to repair it if it went really wrong. And so the prevention part, you might only do something that would prevent it from happening. Like it might only be like a 5% prevention, but it's something. Stick it in there. So example is, I wanted to contact an old boss about a situation we had. Okay, what could I do to prevent the situation from going really, really wrong? Well, first of all, acknowledge what he did do for me, not what he didn't. Okay? What could I do to repair it if it went horribly wrong? I'll obviously call back with an apology and maybe send him some chocolates. And what you'll discover is once you start to jot all this stuff down, you'll realize that the possible end situation isn't really that bad. And you have got strategies to fix it if it went horribly wrong. So if this fear is causing you to freeze and not take action, complete this task. Why are we freezing? Because our brain is protecting us from what we perceive as a threat. This is not a dinosaur coming at us. This fear of conflict is false emotions or false evidence appearing real. Okay, so you think, if I say something to them, if I talk to them, oh gosh, they're going to do this. Okay, it's false. And so our stress response means we operate in our Hulk brain, and how I've avoided it. Some of you are aggressive towards conflict. Anyone who takes me on, I'll take them back. Okay, so be resilient, withstand that fear, stay in your F1 driver's brain. Or if you chicken out and go into your Hulk brain again, then quickly recover quickly into your F1 driver's brain. And this is a great quote. I just remember the day I went through this process and addressed a whole lot of interference with a whole lot of people. It literally felt like I could fly. You know, this quote talks about whatever you wanted or everything you've ever wanted. It's not talking about cars, money, and things. This is talking about empowerment, power. It's talking about having this sense you can do anything, confidence. It's talking about freedom, going back to that. But you've been caged up with this interference for so long, some of us, that when you finally address it, it literally feels like you've been carrying this 10-ton backpack your whole life and now it's gone. And that feels like freedom. And so until you address it, you won't feel what's on the other side of fear. So go forth, stay resilient. Remember, fear is only false evidence appearing real. And on the other side of that fear is everything you ever wanted. And I want you to consider that these interference in those 3 areas are stopping you from performing to your potential. So look forward to hearing any stories and feedback. So thanks for listening, and all the best.